coming out of the States this hour. The US government has ended officially the shutdown, but the aftermath does not look great, with over 1.4 million federal workers still waiting for back pay. Several agencies struggle to catch up on the backlogs. One of the worst hit is the IRS, which faces months of delays in tax filings. The Trump administration has reached a trade deal with Switzerland. As per reports, under the agreement, Switzerland will send a lot of manufacturing to the US and bring down its US trade surplus. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that South Africa will symbolically hand over the G20 presidency to an empty chair in the absence of the US leadership at the upcoming summit. This comes after US President Trump accused the country of rights abuses against whites in South Africa and said no government official would attend the G20. Ahead of the long-awaited White House vote on the release of the Epstein files, US President Donald Trump has cranked up his intense pressure on congressional Republicans to oppose the release. As per reports, US officials are worried that selling F-35 jets to Saudi Arabia could let China gain access to the jet's advanced technology because of growing Saudi-China security ties. As per a poll by Reuters and Ipsos, only 29% of Americans support using the US military to kill suspected drug traffickers without a judge or a court being involved. A rebuke of President Donald Trump strikes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific Ocean. Families of two victims of two Boeing 737 MAX plane crashes, which killed 346 people in 2019, has asked the United States court to reverse a judge's decision to approve the Justice Department's request to dismiss a criminal case against the plane maker. The Beijing firmly opposes the US approval of a $330 million arms sale to Taiwan, calling it a breach of the One China principle. The Foreign Ministry says the deal must be cancelled immediately. Now, the US government has officially ended its longest ever shutdown after 43 days, but the aftermath is far from settled. With 1.4 million federal workers still waiting for back pay, many agencies are struggling to catch up on the backlogs, including the IRS, which faces months of delays in tax filings. The shutdown cost an estimated 60,000 private sector jobs and disrupted daily life, from delayed flights to rising food insecurity. Despite the end of the shutdown, political divisions remain, with President Donald Trump and his allies blaming it on Democrats for the gridlock, while the White House contends with renewed scrutiny over Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The shutdown's end may have a short-term political win for Trump, but as midterms approach and another funding deadline looms in January, the drama is far from over. Okay, we're now joined by Raymond Vickery. He's a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Raymond, thank you very much for joining us here in the program. A sigh of relief will have echoed around the United States. Of course, millions and millions of people were suffering from the US government shutdown, the longest ever in history, whether that was from food insecurity or just simply not getting paid under the federal force. Is there a relief in Washington now the government is back in session?
Well, thanks very much for having me, Thomas. It seems to me that what is going on here is really a fight about the checks and balances and separation of powers that are supposed to be in the United States Constitution. Of course, there is some relief that in regard to SNAP, the food assistance, in regard to air traffic control, and the numerous other functions that federal government performs, there is respite and relief. But as you point out, this is really only temporary. And in January, we might have to face this all again. And it, as I say, goes back to the constitutional question of whether or not the Congress will provide any check and balance on the executive. Thus far, they have not been willing to do so. And in this shutdown, the real reason for it was the unwillingness of President Trump, and his Republican supporters to negotiate at all on basic questions about the assistance for health care. As you know, there's going to be a cliff, if you will, that many Americans will fall off of when the subsidies run out. For the Affordable Care Act. The estimates of something like 40 million people will lose their health care coverage. Those questions are not resolved, and we are not home free at all. We still have an instability which does not augur well for the future leadership of the United States, both in international matters and as a traditional beacon for democracy and the rule of law.
Yeah. And Raymond, of course, a bipartisan deal had to be reached in order for the government to reopen. Given that both sides are continuing to blame each other, continuing this rhetoric, we saw both the president and the House Speaker Mike Johnson blame the Democrats for the shutdown. We saw Senate Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries blame the Republicans. Looking over the next year and that time span between now and January the 30th, how might things change leading to that deadline? And of course, bearing in the midterms as well coming up next year.
Well, I don't think things are really going to change very much. We'll struggle along with a continuing resolution which allows the government to be funded through January. But the real point, of course, is the midterms and whether or not the American people, voters, are going to continue to support President Trump and his Republican supporters in Congress. All the indications are that the bloom is off the rose for President Trump politically. As you saw a week ago, Tuesday, the Democrats swept elections in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, in California redistricting. These are signs, but the real rubber meeting the road will come in the midterms when control of both the House and the Senate will be at stake. And if there is some semblance of congressional rising up to meet its constitutional duties, then the entire picture can be changed. But I don't expect much to be changed between now and January. And the best hope is that we can struggle along and try to, through other means, the courts and other ways, have the democratic values held up and upheld in the United States. It is a sad, sad situation when the United States needs to look to other great democracies like India, as in Western Europe and Japan, for sustenance and support for the democratic norms.
Yes, Raymond, do stay with us as we have further news coming out of Washington. Convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein served as a behind-the-scenes advisor to Steve Bannon during an August 2018 media campaign to support US President Donald Trump. Newly released text messages show Epstein coaching Bannon on television appearances, political messaging, and media strategy. Epstein helped Bannon shape responses to criticism of Trump's tax cuts and offered detailed feedback on Bannon's performance. The messages also reveal the two men discussing key figures in the MAGA movement, including Peter Thiel and Anthony Scaramucci. Epstein's involvement extended to crisis management as the pair responded to scandals. The text suggests that Epstein played a crucial role in guiding Bannon's media strategy while also attempting to conceal their collaboration from public scrutiny. Despite his criminal background, Epstein maintained significant influence over Bannon's pro-Trump media efforts. Okay, now joining us once again is Raymond Vickery. Raymond, Jeffrey Epstein seems to loom large over more than meets the eye. Of course, Donald Trump is now faced with an upcoming vote in the House where we might possibly see the release of the Epstein files. However, a lot of critics think that is pretty unlikely. What are your thoughts on the broader renewed interest in Jeffrey Epstein, in a case that, of course, is years old, but Donald Trump's presidency has brought it back into the light?
Well, I think that this is a point of real peril politically for President Trump. One thing the MAGA base, the Make America Great Again base, has been virtually unanimous on is that the Epstein files and what Epstein did should come to light. That, of course, was first initiated at a time when the MAGA base felt that this could be used against the Democrats, that President Clinton, former President Clinton was involved and so forth. But the basic principle of transparency and information is one that the MAGA base has clinged to in spite of everything else. So this is a point of real peril for the president. He's denied really that he had much contact with Epstein, but as you point out, this was all of a pattern. Epstein, Bannon, President Trump, and for him to be able to deny that there's any involvement here just does not match up with what we know now. And so there is now that the shutdown is over, the Congress is turning to other business, and chief on this is the question of what was the president's involvement with Epstein, and what does this mean for the equal distribution of justice, which has been a bedrock of the U.S. constitutional system.
Yes, and Raymond, of course, as you said, the MAGA base certainly isn't letting this go away. Of course, Donald Trump has leaned into the conspiracy theory throughout his political career. Do you think he's becoming a kind of victim of his own strategy in this sense?
Yes, I think the French expression "hoist on your own petard" is applicable here. President Trump has fueled the conspiracy theories throughout his career, starting with the Central Park Five against people who were wrongly accused there. And this has been a part of the stock and trade. And the whole business of Epstein was a conspiracy theory which was widely promoted by Trump and his supporters when they thought that it could be used against the Democrats. And now it is apparent that there is something in those files which is of direct importance and harm politically to President Trump. And so the reversal, which has taken place by Attorney General Bondi and even the extreme measures of getting a member of Congress into the White House Situation Room for a secure talk to try to get her to reverse her position on letting there be information from these files let out, is hoisting President Trump on his own petard, his own firecracker, which he's lit and let off. So it's going to be very interesting to see how President Trump once again tries to square the circle politically.
Yes, Raymond Vickery, thank you very much for joining us. Always lovely to have you on the programme. We, of course, stay in the United States for our next story. And under President Donald Trump's administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE, received the largest share of 50,000 new federal hires. The bulk of these new employees were recruited to national security roles, which aligns with the administration's focus on immigration enforcement and security. The Director of Federal Human Resources confirmed that most of these hires were at ICE, a key agency for executing Trump's aggressive immigration policies. The administration has also pursued sharp cuts in other areas, freezing hiring and laying off workers in agencies like the IRS and the Department of Health and Human Services. As part of its crackdown on immigration, Trump has reversed policies restricting arrests near sensitive locations and deployed federal agents across the U.S. to enhance enforcement efforts. Matthew Verdum joins us now. He's an American journalist and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Matthew, could you tell us a little bit more about ICE's operations under the Trump administration? Of course, Trump didn't find it. However, the funding for ICE has gone up significantly so that Trump can execute the biggest deportation plan in U.S. history. Matthew, tell us a little bit about ICE and how it's been conducting itself in the United States so far this year.
Well, basically, enforcement at the border halted under the Biden administration, and so they just literally allowed the country to be flooded with illegal aliens, opened up the borders. You can actually see videos of Customs and Border Protection people opening fences on the Rio Grande River in Texas to allow them in. So Donald Trump is insisting on securing the nation's borders and on enforcing immigration laws. And so I'm not surprised that, 50,000 or so people have been hired by the government, and they're largely by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, because this is a policy priority for President Trump, and while he has been laying off people in other part of the federal government because he thinks that the federal government is too bloated, has far too many employees. What is it, 2.5 million, 3 million or something now? He's laid off, a few 100,000 of them. And that's making room for new employees at ICE to enforce immigration laws, which is the centerpiece of President Trump's second term in the White House, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, ICE itself is funded to the extreme. It has Trump's Big Beautiful Bill Act this year. The federal government allocated $170 billion over 4 years for U.S. immigration and border enforcement. I mean, this means that Donald Trump's ICE service has a higher budget than plenty of armies around the world. Your thoughts on this? Is it necessary? What kind of equipment will they be using? And of course, how will they be expanding and executing this huge deportation plan over the next 4 years?
I have no idea what kind of equipment ICE will be using, but I know that there's going to be greater enforcement in the field. In other words, ICE along with another police force within the Department of Homeland Security have been conducting raids in search of illegal aliens. They have sent many troops to places like Los Angeles and Chicago in order to try to enforce America's immigration laws, and they've met largely with resistance from the local Democratic Party officials there. I think that ICE is going to continue to ramp up its enforcement efforts. They're making it more difficult for people to get by in the country if they're here illegally. Although, I think a lot of the reports are exaggerated. Anecdotally, whenever I drive by the Home Depot, a do-it-yourself home improvement store, warehouse, big box store, popular in America, I almost always see illegal aliens outside waiting to be picked up by people to be hired for day jobs like landscaping or cleaning or what have you, yard work. So I think that immigrate. So I don't know how vigorous the enforcement is. Maybe that's it's just anecdotal evidence in my part of the country. Maybe that's not a priority. I don't know. But there's still a lot of illegal aliens here, and Donald Trump's administration is going to make it more difficult for them to function in the country. And ICE enforcement is really a large part of that. The kind of ICE enforcement that America hasn't seen for
Yes.
for decades, really.
Yes, Matthew Verdum, thank you very much. Do stay with us as we have further news
Right.
coming out of the United States. As the United States is considering the sale of F-35 jets to Saudi Arabia, reports suggest that the American intelligence community is showing concern that the jets' sensitive and advanced technology could reach China. Pentagon officials have warned that Beijing could gain access to the information either through espionage or its growing security ties to Riyadh. The proposed purchase of 48 F-35 aircraft, which is worth billions of dollars, comes as Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman is set to meet President Trump in Washington. Now, according to reports, the sale has also revived debates over maintaining Israel's military edge in the region. Israel is currently the only Middle East country with F-35Ss, and past talk of selling the fighter jets to Gulf states have stalled over similar concerns. Joining us once again is Matthew Verdum to discuss this. Matthew, why is the United States, of course, worried about selling these F-35 jets, 48 of them, to Saudi Arabia? Is that truce between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman, which is where Donald Trump made his first state visit to, is that relationship worth risking over a military sale like this?
I don't know that Donald Trump is going to risk is going to endanger the transaction, prevent the sale of the fighter jets to Saudi Arabia. But there are concerns apparently within the U.S. intelligence community that if the jets go to Saudi Arabia, that China, which has security ties to Saudi Arabia, the communist Chinese, could access the technology on the F-35s, and that this could limit that this could hurt U.S. security, and could undermine America's position in the world. So I think that that's the major concern, is that U.S. intelligence analysts don't trust Saudi Arabia enough to think that they are going to do a good job of protecting the proprietary technology in the F-35 jets from prying communist Chinese spy agencies. They view it as a potential major security breach in the making.
Yes, Matthew Verdum, thank you very much for joining us on that topic. Pleasure to have you on the program. Now we move on. Texas A&M University System Regents voted to require professors to seek approval from the school president before discussing certain race and gender topics in their classrooms. The new policy prohibits courses from advocating race or gender ideologies or discussing topics related to sexual orientation or gender identity, unless pre-approved. This move follows a viral incident involving a student confrontation with a professor over gender lessons earlier this year. Critics argue that the policy infringes on academic freedom and may violate First Amendment rights. Supporters, however, say the policy aims to ensure academic neutrality. The policy will apply across all 12 schools in the Texas A&M system, including the flagship Texas A&M University. The decision has sparked debate, with some faculty members calling it a threat to free speech, while others argue that academic freedom does not mean unrestricted teaching on controversial subjects. Now, the giant New Glenn rocket from billionaire Jeff Bezos' space company, Blue Origin, has launched from Florida on its debut mission for paying customers. This makes for 2 NASA satellites towards Mars and nailing the return landing of its reusable booster for the first time. The powerful 2-stage rocket's first flight since its inaugural launch in January and the successful booster landing at sea represented key milestones for Blue Origin in its quest to complete a more equal footing on Elon Musk's SpaceX, the world's leading rocket launch service. A live Blue Origin webcast showed the rocket ascending from its launch tower through clear afternoon skies in a thunder of flames and billowing clouds of vapor movements after its 7 B-4 liquid-fueled engines roared to life. With this launch, NASA's Twin Escapade spacecraft became the first science payload that Blue Origin has delivered to space for NASA or any customer. Now, with that is a wrap on America 360. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.